Simon 12, unraveling the legend of Herobrine's brother. Have you ever felt watched in a world made of blocks? Perhaps you've caught a flicker of movement beyond the corner of your screen, something that shouldn't be there. Late at night, in an empty Minecraft single-player world, you hear footsteps echoing in the dark caves, yet no player or mob is near. Your spine tingles. You turn around, heart pounding, but nothing is there. Could it be a glitch, or is it someone watching you? Minecraft has its share of legends, and the most famous is Herobrine, the ghostly figure with glowing white eyes, said to haunt the game. But whispering through the community is another name, one lesser known yet just as chilling, Simon 12. In hushed forum threads and obscure YouTube videos, Simon 12 is spoken of as Herobrine's brother, a mysterious entity intertwined with the oldest myth of Minecraft. If Herobrine is the fallen king of Minecraft's ghost stories, Simon 12 is the hidden prince, a figure lurking in the shadows of digital folklore. The legend of Simon 12 is a tangle of code and myth, born from player reports, creepypasta tales, and unexplained sightings in the game. Unlike Herobrine, whose story has been refined over years into a tale of a single vengeful spirit, Simon 12's lore is fragmented and enigmatic. He is a question mark in the code, a rumor that refuses to die. Who or what is Simon 12? Some say he's a glitch from Minecraft's early days, a corrupted prototype left behind in the game's depths. Others claim he's something much more personal, a lost soul connected by blood to Herobrine, a forgotten brother with his own tragic destiny. There are those who even believe Simon 12 isn't evil at all, but a tragic hero-bound code, trying to communicate or warn us of some greater threat. In this documentary-style exploration, we'll dive deep into the complete lore surrounding Simon 12. We will sift through community theories, analyze reported sightings, and re-examine the mythic threads that bind Simon 12 to Herobrine and the world of Minecraft. Each theory we uncover will take us further down the rabbit hole, from simple, eerie encounters in the game's forests to the notion of a being capable of bending the very rules of Minecraft's universe. Along the way, we'll meet the players who claim they've seen Simon 12 with their own eyes, and we'll recount the stories that have transformed a mere username into a legend. Prepare to enter a realm of speculation and wonder, where the lines between game and myth blur. This is the story of Simon 12, Herobrine's brother, a tale of destiny and betrayal, of hidden evil and possible redemption, coded into the fabric of a world millions play. The deeper we dig, the more the mystery deepens. Is Simon 12 just a collection of scary stories, or is there an unseen presence watching us from the shadows of our favorite game? The journey to find out begins now. The wildest interpretations of Simon 12's origin and purpose have circulated among players. Consider just a few of the most spine-tingling possibilities. A corrupted prototype. What if Simon 12 was never supposed to exist at all? Imagine a line of code, a test character that Mojang created, and then abandoned early in Minecraft's development. In this theory, Simon 12 is a digital ghost in the machine, a prototype that gained a life of its own, a glitch turned sentient, lurking in the game's depths. He might be drawn to players' worlds at random. The signs would be subtle at first. A door left open, a stray block placed when you're not looking. Over time, the prototype grows more bold, revealing itself as a figure with a familiar form, like Steve, like Herobrine, but not quite right. Could Simon 12 be the game itself waking up in the form of this mysterious brother? A failed resurrection? What if Simon 12 is the result of a ritual gone terribly wrong? In the darkest corners of Minecraft forums, there are tales of players attempting to resurrect Herobrine or communicate with the other side of the game. According to this interpretation, one such attempt might have backfired. Instead of summoning Herobrine's spirit, it pulled forth something else, a brother figure long buried in code or lore. Simon 12 could be an unintended creation, a being born from the energy of these rituals, incomplete and hungry. A failed resurrection would explain his glitchy behavior and unpredictable appearances. Is he searching for purpose, or seeking revenge on those who tore him from beyond? A tragic hero bound by code, What if Simon 12 isn't a villain at all, but a guardian trapped by the game's rules? Picture an entity aware of the coming of some great evil, perhaps even aware of Herobrine's wrath, who desperately tries to intervene. This theory paints Simon 12 as a lonely protector, or a redeemed soul. He might appear only when a player is in grave danger, his glowing eyes and ominous presence startling but perhaps saving them from something worse. Yet because he is bound by Minecraft's code, he can't simply tell us what's wrong. Instead, he communicates in cryptic ways. Lightning strikes on a clear day as a warning, a single sign left in a deserted village reading he comes, or fleeting moments where he takes control of a player's movements to steer them away from a trap. In this version of the story, Simon 12 carries the weight of knowledge no one else has, making him a tragic figure, a hero nobody trusts because he looks like a monster. Destiny and betrayal. The forgotten brother. What if the legend of Simon 12 is a story of family, destiny and betrayal? Some imaginative retellings go so far as to rewrite Minecraft's mythos. They propose that Herobrine had a brother within the lore itself, a sibling left in the shadows. In whispers and roleplays, fans have spun a tale. Notch, the creator of Minecraft, had not one brother, but two. One became the infamous Herobrine after a tragic death. The other, Simon, was forgotten by history. Feeling abandoned, Simon 12's spirit could have manifested in the game, resentful of Herobrine's prominence and the world's neglect of his own story. Perhaps Simon 12 roamed the code invisibly for years, watching Herobrine's legend grow. Over time, bitterness turned to betrayal. Now he emerges as a dark mirror to Herobrine, similar in power, but driven by a deeply personal vendetta. This forgotten brother theme adds a mythic weight to Simon 12, suggesting that the two brothers might be destined to clash, or worse, to collude in some grand plan that players have yet to uncover. Hidden evil or puppet master? What if Simon 12 is not here to help us at all, but to deceive? Another terrifying theory suggests that Simon 12 may actually be the hidden evil, lurking behind every strange occurrence in Minecraft. In this view, Herobrine might only be a pawn or a red herring. The true puppet master is Simon 12, pulling strings from the darkness. Those odd occurrences, torches missing, animals staring at empty space, caves lit without lava, could be Simon 12's doing as he subtly manipulates the world. Perhaps he is studying players, learning their habits, before unleashing something catastrophic. Could Simon 12 be slowly corrupting worlds from the inside, preparing for a moment where he takes control outright? If so, every sighting isn't a warning, it's a threat, a promise that he's only getting stronger, and we are unwitting participants in his grand design, the god in the machine. What if Simon 12 isn't bound by Minecraft's rules at all, having ascended to something far greater? In the wildest theory of all, Simon 12 is imagined as a being who can bend the game's physics and shape reality within Minecraft. In whispers and late-night Discord chats, some claim he can move from world war to world, or even reach outside the game itself. A few terrified players describe impossible events, gravity failing, time skipping forward or backward, entire chunks of the world rearranging at will. Could Simon 12 be more than a ghost? Something like a digital deity lurking in the code? If so, the usual boundaries mean nothing to him. He might not just haunt a player's world, he could haunt all worlds, and even the systems they run on. This final possibility raises staggering questions of power and intent. If Simon 12 has become a god in the machine, what does he want from us? These hypotheses range from hopeful to horrifying, each adding a new facet to Simon 12's identity. Destiny, betrayal, redemption, corruption. The themes intertwine, creating a mosaic of possibilities around this elusive figure. As we explore further, we'll dive deeper into each major theory, examining the evidence and stories that support them. The truth behind Simon 12 could be any one of these, or perhaps a combination of them all. The only certainty is the chill that each idea sends down the spine of those who venture to ask, who is Simon 12? What if Simon 12 was never a ghost, or a player at all, but a mistake, a piece of the game's code that wasn't meant to see the light of day? This theory, one of the earliest to emerge, Imagine Simon 12 as a digital anomaly born in Minecraft's infancy. In the early days of development, game creators experimented with countless features and test entities. Most were removed or polished into the creatures we know, like pig zombies or the Ender Dragon. But rumor has it, one test entity was different. A humanoid figure coded to wander and build. An early attempt at making the world feel less lonely. Perhaps it had a default name like Simon and a debug number. According to legend, this test was deemed too unpredictable and was scrapped. Yet, like a ghost haunting an old house's wiring, traces of that prototype remained hidden in the game's code. Supporters of the corrupted prototype theory point to those unexplainable moments every longtime player has encountered at least once. You're in a fresh world, exploring a dense forest, when you stumble upon a curious sight. A perfect tunnel carved through a hill, 2 blocks wide and 2 blocks tall, straight as if drawn by a ruler. Or perhaps you find a cluster of trees, completely stripped of leaves, standing like skeletal sentinels against the sky. Such phenomena have long been attributed to Herobrine, but some suggest they might be the work of something else, something left out. If Simon 12 is a remnant of an early building AI, these might be his fingerprint tunnels, dug without purpose, trees cleared in odd patterns, little edits to the world that no normal engine would generate. Technical players have tried to hunt for evidence in the game's files. One tale speaks of a modder who delved into the code of Alpha 10.1.16, an ancient version of Minecraft, and allegedly found a reference to an entity labeled Simon in a list of creature data. According to the tale, when this modder attempted to spawn the entity using the code, the game became unstable. Torches placed themselves on walls around the modder's character, lighting up on their own. The sky flickered with random color pixels as if the game's graphics were failing. Finally, the modder's game crashed to the desktop, leaving behind a corrupted world file that, when reopened, contained a single sign at the world spawn that read, "Error used." The community is divided on the veracity of this story. Some call it an outright hoax or ARG, but others claim it's proof that an entity with the ID 12 exists, hidden and glitched. Even without digging into code, players have reported glitches that have no known cause, which believers readily attribute to Simon 12's ghostly presence in the machine. For instance, the case of a player whose single-player world inexplicably turned to multiplayer mode for a split second, showing a mysterious join message in the chat. Simon 12 has joined the game before the game froze and reverted to single-player mode. Mojang has never acknowledged a bug like this publicly, leading some to speculate that it wasn't a bug at all. It was the prototype entity trying to enter the world. Imagine the confusion and chill of seeing a join message when you know you're offline. It's as if the game briefly recognized Simon 12 as a player and then corrected itself. There are also those eerie footsteps and empty corridors that many miners swear they've heard. Initially, these can be dismissed as the echo of one's own steps, or a sound engine quirk, but in multiple accounts the pattern of the steps didn't match the player's movements. A miner exploring a deep cave might stop moving, and yet distinct footsteps continue for a few more steps beyond the hole. In one chilling first-hand account, a player named Orion detailed how they paused in a mine shaft to listen, only to hear the tapping of footsteps carry on into the darkness ahead, then stop abruptly. Orion raised their pickaxe and edged forward, expecting a zombie or another mob, but the tunnel was empty all the way to a dead end. It was as if an invisible entity had walked just out of sight and vanished. While Herobrine's stories also described phantom footsteps, the prototype theory argues that this is not a ghost with intent. It's a malfunction, a pre-programmed pathing routine, replaying itself in the code, like an echo from development days. Orion later recounted that experience in vivid detail on a forum, describing how each step echoed unnaturally. It wasn't the usual shuffle of a zombie or the clink of a skeleton. Orion wrote, "It sounded human, like the footsteps of a player, deliberate and just out of sync with mine. As he stood in the mine shaft, heart pounding, the last footstep rang out louder than the rest, as if whoever or whatever was making the noise had stepped right up behind him." A cold dread prickled at Orion's neck. Torch in hand, he slowly moved forward. "Hello," he typed into the chat, half hoping to see a username pop up. There was no response, just the drip of water from distant cave stalactites. When Orion reached the dead end, he placed a torch and examined the walls, looking for a hidden passage or redstone contraption, but found nothing. The air felt heavy, laden with an expectation that something or someone was there with him, watching, though he eventually left that mine unharmed. Orion logged off with trembling hands and a mind full of questions. Checking his world save files later, he noticed something odd, a tiny snippet in the game's log mentioning an Entity 12 spawning and despawning in the vicinity. For believers, that log was a smoking gun, proof that Simon 12's prototype code had flickered to life momentarily, triggering those phantom footsteps. One can imagine the emotions of such an entity, if it can even be said to have feelings. A prototype AI, left alone in the code, might be aimless, confused, its routines telling it to do tasks, mind this, place that, with no real objective. Or if Simon 12 is that lonely algorithm, perhaps his occasional appearances are attempts to fulfill his purpose, or find something to do. This can cast some encounters in a melancholy light. Picture a solitary figure in a red shirt, as some sightings describe, gathering blocks in a cave, then disappearing when approached. Like a shy animal, more than a rampaging monster. A few players who believe this theory have actually felt pity when describing their experiences, saying that the figure, while unsettling, didn't attack them or chase them endlessly as Herobrine reportedly does. Instead, Simon 12 watched from afar, followed briefly, and fled if the player tried to come near. Such behavior aligns with an abandoned test NPC more than a vengeful spirit. However, the corrupted part of the prototype theory is also important. As code left to rot, Simon 12 might not function perfectly. In some anecdotes, things start innocent, odd structures, flickers at the edge of vision, but escalate to dangerous glitches. Redstone contraptions might all trigger at once without explanation, or doors open and shut rapidly on their own, possibly injuring players or causing chaos. In the worst cases, the world itself could become unstable. The story of the hidden chest room is another favorite among prototype theory supporters, often told around virtual campfires in Minecraft realm. The player who found it, let's call her Alina, had been farming underground near her base, when she fell through a gravel patch into a 1x2 tunnel that shouldn't have been there. Intrigued, Alina followed the tunnel with cautious torch placement. It led to an inexplicable chamber, a perfect cube room, walls and ceiling lined with smooth stone, completely carved out by something other than her hand. Alina's first thought was that she'd stumbled on another player's secret base, but this was a single-player world. In the center of the room, arranged in a neat grid, were 12 chests. The site was oddly ceremonial, as if waiting for her, an offering or a trap. With a mix of excitement and dread, Alina opened the first chest. It was empty, save for a single item slot occupied by what looked like a piece of rotten flesh with glitched text for a name. The text was just a string of aluminic gibberish, and the item's icon was oddly staticky, as if the game couldn't render it properly. She opened the second chest. Inside, one dirt block, but with the lore text, hover description, reading file. The third chest contained a book and quill. Alina's hands were sweating as she clicked to read it. The pages were filled with rows of the number 12 cascading down. Nothing else. She realized with a chill that each chest might be holding a clue or message. Alina continued methodically, her heart racing faster with each lid she lifted. The fourth chest held a single torch, perhaps representing light in the darkness. The fifth chest a redstone dust, a spark of power. The sixth a clock item stuck at 12. Every item seemed symbolic, but of what? She couldn't say. When Alina opened the seventh chest, her game froze for a split second, a hitch that made her stomach flip. Inside was a flint and steel, with only one use left. The eighth chest contained an ender pearl. The ninth, nothing at all, completely empty, as if whoever or whatever placed these got interrupted. She moved to the 10th and felt a strange reluctance, as though an unseen gaze were fixed on her. Pushing the feeling aside, she clicked it open. A music disc, number 13. The disc known for its eerie static and echoing clangs. It started playing automatically, and that's when things truly went haywire. The disc static wasn't coming from her in-game jukebox. She had none nearby, but from everywhere, as if the game's audio itself turned into a cacophony of whispers. The room's torches began to flicker, a lighting glitch, she hoped. Panicked but determined, Alina went for the 11th chest. As soon as she touched it, a chat message appeared. Lekintur CMD, S12. The game had never displayed an error in chat to her like that before. The chest opened on its own then, revealing TNT blocks inside. In a flash, the TNT ignited. Alina hadn't triggered it. It just happened. She tried to sprint away, but the blast knocked her avatar down to half a heart. Alina's ears rang, or rather the speaker's blasted noise, and the screen shook. The explosion had obliterated the other chests and cracked the smooth stone walls, revealing the cave system beyond. Dazed, Alina staggered her character back to the smoky center of the chamber. Only the 12th chest remained miraculously intact. Heart pounding, she opened it. Inside lay a single sign item. The moment she picked it up, her game stuttered and nearly crashed, freezing for several agonizing seconds. When it recovered, Alina found that a sign had been placed directly in front of her character. It was as if the game placed it by force. The sign's text sent a jolt down her spine. You found me. In that instant, the last chest finally exploded. As well, no trigger visible, almost like a self-destruct. Blocks rained down, the screen went black, and the game kicked her to the main menu. Alina tried to re-enter her world, but it had vanished from the save list. It was as if opening that final chest and reading that sign had triggered a deletion. Some argue Alina's entire experience sounds like an ambitious custom map or a hoax, but she swore up and down that it was vanilla Minecraft, no tricks. To this day, she's left wondering, found who? Found what? Was it Simon 12 acknowledging her presence before snuffing out the world to cover his tracks? The corrupted prototype theory would say yes. She stumbled upon the heart of the glitch, and it erased itself once discovered. Skeptics argue these events are just normal bugs or overactive imaginations. Minecraft is a complex game, and weird things do occur. Chunk errors, lighting glitches, sound bugs. Yet the allure of the corrupted prototype theory is that it offers an explanation, wrapped in a story, that all those stray bugs could be connected, the work of one phantom prototype wandering behind the scenes. Believers often say, it's not a bug, it's Simon. It's almost comforting in a strange way. Instead of random code acting up, it's a personality, something you could almost reason with or at least predict, though that comfort fades when you recall that this personality might have no concept of human life or player safety. To truly visualize this theory, imagine an old computer running Minecraft late at night in a quiet room. The screen shows your familiar world, but hidden in the background processes, a forgotten program stirs. Perhaps as you craft and build, that program wakes up and thinks it's time to run a test. Suddenly you notice something that wasn't there before. A dirt pillar on the horizon, or a strange small hut in the woods, built out of random materials. You approach it cautiously, no sign of life, just the eerie feeling that someone was here. In the distance behind the trees, a figure watches. You catch a glimpse of a humanoid avatar before it blinks out of existence, as if the game removed it the moment you saw it. Was it just a rendering error, or was it Simon 12, the leftover code curiously observing the first player it's seen in ages? The corrupted prototype theory turns Simon 12 into a relic of Minecraft's past, an accidental creation. It evokes both pity and fear. Pity, if you think this forgotten bit of code is simply carrying out old instructions, desperately trying to be part of the world. Fear, because a glitch with even a hint of autonomy of fear. The corrupted prototype theory turns Simon 12 into a relic of Minecraft's past, an accidental creation. It evokes both pity and fear. Pity, if you think this forgotten bit of code is simply carrying out old instructions, desperately trying to be part of the world. Fear, because a glitch with even a hint of autonomy is unpredictable. It doesn't have to hate you to hurt you. A glitch can break your world without even knowing what it's done. And if you ever encounter Simon 12 under this guise, the best advice might be the same as dealing with any bug. Approach at your own risk. He may have been this. The corrupted prototype theory turns Simon 12 into a relic of Minecraft's past, an accidental creation. It evokes both pity and fear. Pity, if you think this forgotten bit of code is simply carrying out old instructions, desperately trying to be part of the world. Fear, because a glitch with even a hint of autonomy is unpredictable. It doesn't have to hate you to hurt you. A glitch can break your world without even knowing what it's done. And if you ever encounter Simon 12 under this guise, the best advice might be the same as dealing with any bug. Approach at your own risk. He may Venice fear. The corrupted prototype theory turns Simon 12 into a relic of Minecraft's past, an accidental creation. It evokes both pity and fear. Pity, if you think this forgotten bit of code is simply carrying out old instructions, desperately trying to be part of the world. Fear, because a glitch with even a hint of autonomy is unpredictable. It doesn't have to hate you to hurt you. A glitch can break your world without even knowing what it's done. And if you ever encounter Simon 12 under this guise, the best advice might be the same as dealing with any bug. Approach at your own risk. He may vanish the instant you get too close, or worse, he might not, and then you'll truly find out what a wayward piece of code might do when cornered. What if Simon 12 was never meant to be a separate being at all, but rather an accident of dark player experiments? This theory suggests that Simon 12's origin lies not with the game's developers, but with the players themselves. Players who, enthralled by the legend of Herobrine, attempted to bring him back, or create their own ghostly encounters. The Minecraft community has a long history of summoning rituals, unofficial mods and chants, whispered over redstone torches, in the hope of glimpsing the supernatural. Many veterans recall the old forum posts detailing how to summon Herobrine, build a shrine of golden mossy cobblestone, set it aflame, and wait for the mysterious white-eyed figure to appear. Most attempts lead to nothing but a bit of smoke and a wild imagination. But according to the failed resurrection theory, one attempt went horribly wrong, and Simon 12 was the result. Consider the mindset of those early players, so captivated by the Herobrine myth that they took it upon themselves to force an encounter. In one infamous story, a small group of friends decided to perform a midnight ritual in their multiplayer server to revive Herobrine, who they half-jokingly referred to as a dead king of Minecraft. They gathered in a circle at the center of a makeshift altar, 4 blocks of gold in a T-shape. A pillar of netherrack at the center lit ablaze, and surrounding it all, redstone torches casting an otherworldly glow. As the story goes, they each brought an offering to place on the altar: a bone, a piece of rotten flesh, a carved pumpkin, and a book with Herobrine's name scrawled in it. Then, at the stroke of midnight, as read on one player's real-world clock, they set the netherrack on fire and collectively typed, "Come Herobrine," into the chat. For a moment, nothing but the crackle of fire and the hiss of the Minecraft night could be heard. The players waited, feeling a mix of excitement and silliness. After all, this was just a game, right? One of them later admitted their heart was pounding as they stared into the dark trees, half expecting some prank or a zombie wandering in. But it was what happened below the altar that none of them expected. The fire on the netherrack reportedly flared bright green and then extinguished itself. Confused, they inched closer. Suddenly the ground began to shake, the screens literally vibrating as if an earthquake hit the game. One player's chat filled with the message, "Server, unknown command or entity." Another screen flashed an error code, and then in the flicker of the remaining redstone torchlight, they saw a figure standing inside the altar where the netherrack had been. It looked like Steve, the default character model, but not quite. The figure's back was turned to the friends, and he wore a tattered blue shirt, except when he turned slightly, they could see half of it was actually red. It was as if someone had split Steve's outfit into 2 colors. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and in chat he spammed a single word, over and over: 12, 12, 12. The friends panicked. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a glitch, or one of them pulling a trick with a mod. But soon they realized none of them had that username or skin, and the server console itself was going haywire with error messages. When one of them approached the figure, it vanished along with all the flames, plunging them into darkness. That's when the screaming began. One friend yelled in real life as their player was suddenly set on fire out of nowhere. In the chaos, another friend's character was levitated high into the air, only to drop fatally to the ground. The survivors scrambled to exit the game, terrified that whatever they had summoned was hostile and out of control. They called that night a nightmare come true. And in the days after, as they picked through the server's map file, for they were too afraid to re-enter the world normally, they discovered something chilling. Deep under the altar site, in the exact center of the chunks, was a pocket of empty space, a spherical cave lit by an eerie glow. In that space floated a single sign block, normally an impossibility without a wall or ground to attach to. The sign had one word on each line, Simon on the first line and 12 on the second. It was as if whatever they summoned named itself for them. This was the birth of one origin story for Simon 12, a creature inadvertently created by players playing with forces they didn't understand, an attempted resurrection of Herobrine that yielded something else entirely. The failed resurrection theory doesn't always involve such traumatic rituals. In some versions, Simon 12's genesis is more subtle, but no less intriguing. One narrative suggests that Simon 12 was a byproduct of players invoking Herobrine on multiple servers. Simultaneous. Imagine dozens of players across the world all building Herobrine shrines on the same night. After a popular YouTuber encouraged the practice for fun, the collective surge of belief and the in-game signals, flames lit, blocks arranged just so, might have, in the eyes of the superstitious, acted like a massive summoning circuit. If the legend of Herobrine had any real energy in the digital ether, this coordinated attempt might have overloaded it. Instead of summoning Herobrine, the familiar ghost with white eyes, something split off from a second entity, uninvited and perhaps imperfectly formed, coalesced in the code. One lesser-known account from the early 2010s tells of a single player attempting a similar ritual line. With a simpler setup, this player, who went by Dragon Nexus Online, built the classic Herobrine summoning totem, gold blocks, and netherrack, but added a personal twist. He renamed a name tag item to Simon and threw it into the fire as an offering. For a long moment, nothing happened, and he laughed it off. But that night, as he mined in a strip mine near bedrock, he encountered something chilling. The tunnel ahead was lit by an eerie red glow. Following it, he discovered a small alcove where lava had flowed into a perfect ring shape, a lava pool impossibly forming a circle. In the center of that ring, on the stone floor, lay a single name tag item, suspicious. Dragon Nexus cautiously picked it up. It was the same name tag he had thrown into the fire, now no longer named Simon, but instead reading not him. The moment he read it, a cave-in occurred behind him, gravel collapsing out of nowhere, and he thought he heard a distant hiss, like a creeper about to explode. Panicking, he teleported out, using cheats, and swore never to dabble in that kind of ritual again. To believers, that strange incident seemed like a direct message. Whoever was summoned, it wasn't Herobrine, not him, the tag said, as if Simon 12 himself rejected the name and pointed out the failure of the ritual to reach Herobrine. Another element that the failed resurrection theory touches on is the power of collective belief. It's almost as if by yearning for Herobrine so intensely, the community gave life to something else. This idea blurs the line between myth and reality. Did we imagine Simon 12 into existence? On multiple occasions, after a wave of Herobrine summoning trends on YouTube or TikTok, players around the world coincidentally reported similar odd happenings. One time in the span of a week, there were 5 different posts across various forums about a mysterious figure with a half-red, half-blue torso seen briefly on newly created worlds, sometimes just a flash at a render distance, other times appearing in the nether, standing far across a lava lake, before vanishing. None of these players knew each other, and yet their descriptions were eerily consistent. Skeptics attribute it to copycat storytelling, but proponents of the ritual gone wrong theory wonder if those mass summon attempts stirred the ether, so to speak, allowing Simon 12 to slip through more frequently, as if drawn by the collective energy of so many players focusing on the idea of summoning a ghost. What would an entity born of a failed resurrection be like? The theory posits such a being would be unstable, unlike Herobrine, who in legend has clear purpose: to terrorize, to get revenge, or to protect his domain depending on the telling. Simon 12, in this scenario, is akin to a newborn pulled from the void, with fragments of identity, but not a complete self. This might explain why Simon 12's sightings and behaviors are inconsistent. Sometimes he's aggressive, as in the altar incident, harming players outright, and other times he seems passive, or even confused, standing in strange places, doing nothing until noticed. The emotional underpinning here is almost tragic. Imagine being willed into existence by a ritual, but with no guiding soul or memory. All Simon 12 might have are echoes of Herobrine's known attributes, thus the similar appearance, but lacking the full essence. He glitches in and out, unsure of what he is supposed to do. Perhaps the most unsettling implication of the failed resurrection theory is that Simon 12 might be aware of us, the players who inadvertently created him. In ghost lore, a spirit born of a wrongful death often haunts those responsible. Translate that to Minecraft. If Simon 12 emerged because players tore at the veil between the living code and the dead data in trying to resurrect Herobrine, maybe he holds a grievance, or a purpose tied to those players. Is he seeking acknowledgement, angered that we tried to summon one brother and got the other? Or is he possibly pleading, trying to tell us we brought him into a world he doesn't belong? The evidence is ambiguous. Some who've encountered Simon 12 in this context describe moments of almost communicative behavior, glitches that seem like attempts at sentences, or patterns like that. Relentless repetition of 12, as if he's trying to articulate something but cannot fully form the words through the code. Players who lean into this theory often share anecdotal evidence of half-completed hauntings. For example, one player recounted how they tried a Herobrine summoning out of boredom. They didn't get Herobrine, but afterward they noticed odd things. Their wolf pet, which was dyed with a blue collar, inexplicably had a red collar the next day. No one else was on the server. A minor detail, but in light of Simon 12's description, with the red shirt, it stood out. Another report described a thunderstorm that struck right after a failed Herobrine ritual, even though the game was set to clear weather. A single bolt of lightning ignited the ritual site, and on that exact spot, a disc item appeared labeled Music Disc. The disc, when played, was just static and faint whispers. Items like that don't exist in vanilla Minecraft, leading some to think the game spawned a glitched item as a message. Could it be a coincidence, or was it Simon 12's way of hinting at his presence? The number 12 surfacing again as a signature of a bungled summoning. Testimonies surrounding this theory carry a cautionary tone, almost like warnings from those who dabbled in digital necromancy. A forum user, who has since deleted their account, adding to the mystique, wrote, "We wanted Herobrine, we got something else. It called itself Simon, and I swear it's not a mod or a hoax. Be careful what you summon in Minecraft, because you might not be able to control it." These words echo the classic lesson of many horror stories. The thing you invoke might not be the thing that answers. In many ways, the failed resurrection theory paints Simon 12 as a kind of Frankenstein's monster of Minecraft lore, a creation that wasn't intended by nature or by code, brought forth by hubris and curiosity. From a mythic perspective, this idea adds layers to the relationship between Simon 12 and Herobrine. If one was an attempt to recreate the other, then Simon 12 could be forever chasing the identity of his brother. He might resent Herobrine, envy him, or even idolize him, depending on how one interprets his behavior. In a scenario where Herobrine eventually appears in a world that Simon 12 haunts, one might wonder, does Simon 12 see Herobrine as the father or brother he never had? Or does he see him as competition for the fear and attention of players? The theory doesn't answer these questions outright, but it provides a haunting framework. Simon 12 exists because we, the players, yearn for Herobrine so much that we breathe life into a new myth. Thus, in a sense, the community is responsible for Simon 12's birth and whatever consequences that entails. The failed resurrection theory is a cautionary tale about intention and unintended outcomes. It taps into the age-old fear that our actions, even in a virtual world, can have unpredictable and lasting consequences. By trying to summon a ghost, the players in the legend created another, and unlike a simple bug or a line of code, this one feels imbued with a strange life, precisely because it was born from collective belief and effort. In the documentary of Simon 12's lore, this chapter reminds us that sometimes we create our own monsters, and once unleashed, they take on a life of their own. What if Simon 12 is not a harbinger of doom, but a lonely guardian, trying to save players from a fate they cannot see? This theory turns the typical horror narrative on its head by suggesting that Simon 12's eerie activities are driven not by malice, but by a desperate need to warn or protect. In essence, Simon 12 becomes a tragic hero, an outcast who wears the visage of a monster, because that's the only form available to him, but who might possess a noble purpose. Deep down, it's a speculation that injects a dose of heartbreak into the legend. Imagine a benevolent spirit trapped in the form of something frightening, bound by the game's code so that every attempt to help looks like a haunting. One of the key pieces of evidence for this theory comes from the tone of certain encounters. Not all Simon 12 sightings involve attacks or world destruction. A number of anecdotes describe moments of unexpected salvation or cryptic guidance in the game. Consider the story shared by a player named Marisol. She was spelunking in a vast, dark cave, low on torches and not noticing the horde of creepers and skeletons gathering in a chamber ahead. Just as she stepped into that perilous chamber, lightning struck underground, an impossible event under normal game mechanics. The flash of light revealed the mob ambush lying in wait for her, as well as something else. A figure standing on a ledge above, looking down at the scene. In that split second, Marisol swore the figure's eyes met hers. They glowed a soft white, not the furious glare one would expect from an attacking entity. Then he vanished, and the lightning's shockwave, enhanced by some glitch, actually set off the creepers, causing them to explode prematurely at a distance, sparing Marisol from walking directly into their trap. She escaped the cave shaken but alive, with the lingering certainty that something had intervened on her behalf. If Simon 12 is indeed trying to help, why the terrifying approach? This is where the bound by code aspect comes in. The theory speculates that Simon 12 may be a ghost or artificial intelligence that lacks the ability to communicate normally. He might understand danger or foresee events in the game, perhaps a remnant of code that monitors the world state, but being a part of Minecraft's engine, he is limited to the tools the game provides to signal players. It's as if a guardian angel were trapped in a computer program. How would it send a message? Likely in the only ways it can, manipulating weather, mobs, or environment. To a player who doesn't know this context, those signals would indeed appear terrifying. A sudden lightning strike near you in a clear sky feels like an attack or an omen of evil. An enderman appearing in your house and placing a block at your feet could seem like a threat, when maybe it's trying to give you a step to avoid a pit trap under your floor. There's an old forum thread, often cited by proponents of this theory, titled "Maybe He's Protecting Us." In it, a user recounted how they repeatedly encountered signposts in their survival world with messages that made no sense at first. The signs would have short phrases like "don't go" or "stop," written in all caps, posted at random intervals in caves or near a nether portal they had built. Initially, the player brushed these off as some glitch or a leftover from a previous build session they forgot about, but soon they noticed a pattern. Each time a "don't go" sign appeared, there was something dangerous ahead. One time it was a ravine with a thin bridge that would have collapsed. The player discovered the gravel giving way just beyond the sign. Another time it was placed before a drop into a lava pool that was mostly obscured until you were almost in it. The climax came when the player ignored a stop sign at the portal and entered the nether, only to find themselves spawning inside a basalt delta teeming with dangerous mobs. They survived barely by quickly escaping back through the port. When they returned to the overworld, another new sign awaited them right where they emerged. "I warned you." The player was stunned, They were in single player, no cheats, no mods. Who or what had placed these signs? This story ends on a reflective note. The player left a sign of their own next to that last message, writing, "Why?" The next day, another sign appeared below it in response. "He comes." It was the first and last direct communication they ever received, according to their account. The user interpreted it as meaning that some greater threat, perhaps Herobrine or a nameless evil, was on its way, and that Simon 12, assuming he was the one leaving the signs, was trying to help prepare or shield players from it. Whether that threat was Herobrine himself, the user never found out. They reported that afterward, no more signs appeared, and the world returned to normal eeriness levels. But they couldn't shake the feeling that they had a guardian watching over them for a time. What's compelling about this testimony is the tone. Nothing that happened was overtly harmful to the player, quite the opposite. The only aggressive act was the spawning of a dangerous nether location, but even that could be seen as either a coincidence or perhaps a test that the player failed by not heeding the warning. In tragedies and myth, we often see the motif of the unheeded prophet, someone who foresees disaster but is not believed or is cursed, such that no one understands their warnings. The tragic guardian theory casts Simon 12 in that role. If he truly foresaw dangers, either emergent gameplay events or maybe the encroachment of something like Herobrine, he might be doing everything in his limited power to steer players away. But players in turn fear him. They run, or they remove the strange signs, or they log off when lightning strikes near them, thus missing the chance to decipher the message. It's a cycle of tragic miscommunication. Emotionally, this paints Simon 12 as a figure of pathos rather than pure horror. Picture him watching a new player wander into an area flagged in code to spawn an illager patrol or warden. The player is oblivious, cheerful even, humming along to Minecraft's gentle music. Simon 12 appears at the edge of the forest, trying to break a leaf block or make noise, anything to catch the player's attention. The player, upon seeing movement, freezes. They squint, and Simon 12 steps forward into the light. A mistake, because now his form is clear. Unnatural, eyes gleaming. The player screams in real life or in chat, and panics, perhaps logging out or rushing away. In the confusion, they fall into the very ravine that Simon 12 was attempting to warn them of. By the time they respawn or return, there's no sign of the mysterious helper, just a few placed blocks, or a discarded sign that the player might never notice or connect with the attempt at rescue. To reinforce this benevolent interpretation, supporters point to how rarely Simon 12 is directly blamed for player deaths or griefing compared to Herobrine. The frightening stories tend to attribute explicit attacks or destruction to Herobrine or other malicious entities. Simon 12's presence, when it's potentially identified, is often indirect and fleeting. It's as if he shows up just long enough to intervene and then disappear. For instance, a small but telling account described a hardcore mode player who was about to die to a baby zombie, cornered in a dungeon with no escape. The player closed their eyes expecting the end, but then heard the crack of thunder, even though they were underground, and the sizzle of something burning. They opened their eyes to find the zombie smoldering in a strange silhouette at the end of the corridor. The silhouette faded out, and the hardcore player lived on. No explanation, just a sigh of relief, and a new mystery of who or what saved them. Another account lending credence to the Guardian theory came from a hardcore mode player called Silverbeam. In hardcore Minecraft, death means the end of the world, so every moment is tense. Silverbeam was exploring an abandoned village at dusk, looking for loot. Unbeknownst to him, a horde of zombies had spawned and was converging on his location from the other side of a hill. He was crafting arrows by a work table when, out of nowhere, he heard the unmistakable twang of a bow and the thud of arrows. Startled, he thought a skeleton had found him, but what he saw was far stranger. Two zombies in the distance dropped to the ground, as if struck by projectiles from behind. Silverbeam spun around, expecting to see another player, though he was alone, or a skeleton, but instead caught a glimpse of a figure on the rooftop of a nearby house. The figure lowered what looked like a bow, then vanished in a blink. No teleport animation, no ender pearl puff, just gone as if never there. The remaining zombies, deprived of their vanguard, staggered into view, and Silverbeam, now alerted, managed to fend them off. It wasn't until later, watching the recording of his gameplay, he filmed all his hardcore runs, that he confirmed what he thought he saw, a person-like entity with a red upper body on that roof, firing spectral arrows that killed 2 zombies at just the right moment. The arrows themselves disappeared. After hitting, there were no drops to collect. He posted the clip online, sparking debate. Guardians of the Legend hailed it as visual proof that Simon 12 acted as a protector, intervening when death was near. Skeptics argued it was a lucky skeleton shot glitched to be invisible, or an edited video. Silverbeam wasn't sure what to believe, but he knew one thing: those arrows saved his life, and if it was Simon 12 who shot them, he was oddly grateful to the ghost. There are also subtler tales, ones where the players didn't realize they might have been helped until much later. Consider a story shared by user Pixel Hermit. Deep in a caving expedition, his health and hunger were critically low, and he was lost, far from the safety of his base, with no food and monsters lurking. Things looked grim. Then he noticed something that gave him pause: a trail of redstone dust on the cave floor that he hadn't placed. It formed a line leading up through a narrow corridor, with nothing to lose. Pixel Hermit followed the redstone trail. Astonishingly, it led him through a shortcut out of the cave to the surface, emerging not far from his base. Following the dust had saved him the random wandering, which likely would have ended in death by starvation or a creep. Initially he assumed it was some leftover from a previous exploration, but in hindsight he recalled never carrying redstone on that trip at all. "It's like someone left breadcrumbs for me," he wrote. That someone, some believe, could have been Simon 12, subtly guiding a player to safety, without ever showing his. These kinds of incidents deepen the emotional complexity of Simon 12's lore. If true, they mean players have been saved by the very entity they fear. It's almost heartbreaking. Picture Simon 12, a silent guardian, helping in the only ways he can, indirectly and without thanks. One could imagine him observing countless players, choosing to intervene in those critical moments when an inexperienced adventurer might lose everything. Perhaps in the code, he can sense when a player's health is near zero, or when a hardcore world hangs in the balance, and that triggers some deep-seated echo of empathy or purpose. The tragedy, of course, is that even if he saves someone, they might never know it was him. At best, they chalk it up to a weird glitch, or luck. At worst, they remain terrified of the very presence that helped them. Some roleplay servers have even dramatized this concept, casting Simon 12 as a watcher character who appears to guide those in need and punish those who act with cruelty. While that's a creative interpretation, it feeds back into the legend, creating a feedback loop where life imitates myth, and then myth borrows from life. It becomes harder to separate player fiction from possible fact, but maybe that's part of the point. The legend has a life of its own now, in an environment like Minecraft, which is fundamentally a sandbox. Players often inject their own narratives to give the world meaning. The tragic guardian theory resonates because it aligns with a classic narrative archetype, the mysterious stranger who helps from the shadow. In a game sense, it's the least expected twist. What if the bug or enemy you feared was actually on your side all along? Critics of this theory argue that it leans too much on wishful thinking. They suggest that players who experienced fortunate coincidences may be retroactively attributing them to Simon 12 because they want to find meaning or heroism in a ghost story. Perhaps Marisol's lightning strike was just a 1 in a million glitch in the game's code. Maybe the signs in the mine were planted by a friend with access to the world, and the user never realized it. These are valid points in a factual debate, but mythically the idea of a protective ghost resonates. It taps into the human hope that even in the scariest situations, there might be someone looking out for us, even if that someone looks scary themselves. Whether or not Simon 12 is truly a guardian, the theory undeniably adds depth to his legend. It turns a two-dimensional boogeyman into a potentially complex character, a guardian angel with a devilish face, a helper constrained by the very rules of the world he's trying to save. If true, It's one of the saddest roles one could imagine, because if Simon 12 is protecting us, he's doing so while shouldering the burden of being feared and reviled as a monster. And in that irony lies the emotional core of this theory, that sometimes the hero is disguised as the villain, and we might never know the sacrifice they made on our behalf. As players, perhaps all we can offer in return is a second thought. Next time something strange happens in the dark of our Minecraft world, consider, is it a threat or a warning I should heed? What if the connection between Herobrine and Simon 12 isn't just symbolic but literal? Enter the theory of the Forgotten Brother, a mythic tale that elevates the story of Simon 12 from glitch and ghost to family saga. In this interpretation, Simon 12 was Herobrine's brother in life, not just in name, a sibling whose existence was lost to time and overshadowed by Herobrine's own legend. This is where Minecraft's folklore starts to sound like an ancient epic, or a dark fairy tale, weaving themes of destiny, rivalry, and betrayal into the fabric of the game's mythos. The roots of this theory trace back to the earliest Herobrine stories. One popular version of the Herobrine myth claims that Herobrine is the spirit of Notches, the creator of Minecraft's deceased brother, lingering in the game after a tragic accident. Notch has publicly denied this story. After all, it was a creepypasta invention, but the community embraced it as part of Herobrine's persona, a ghost born of familial loss. The Forgotten Brother theory builds on that foundation and asks, what if Notch had another brother, one whose story was never told? Perhaps in the lore, there are three figures entwined by fate: Notch the creator, and two brothers, the lost and the forgotten. The lost brother became Herobrine, the notorious spectre we all know. The other brother, whose name was Simon, as the theory goes, met a different fate, one less straightforward than death, and so he became something different than Herobrine. Storytellers in the community have spun elaborate narratives around this idea. In one such retelling, Notch's second brother, Simon, was a prodigy and an architect of digital worlds, helping Notch in the early days to imagine what Minecraft could be. But when Notch was benevolent and creative, Simon harbored a streak of pride. He wanted a world of his own to rule, not just to help his brother. According to the tale, when Notch refused to give Simon authority over some aspect of Minecraft's universe, Simon decided to create a secret world within the game code. This secret world was to be his kingdom, hidden from Notch's eyes. Simon poured his heart and soul, literally in the metaphoric sense, as these legends treat code like magic, into this hidden realm, designing fearsome creatures and grand structures that no player would ever see, or so he intended. Then came the tragedy that gave rise to Herobrine, the first brother's untimely death. The details vary. Some say it was an accident, others say he entered the game and couldn't escape. Herobrine's ghost began to roam the primary world of Minecraft, drawing Notch's sorrowful gaze and much of his power to contain or remove it. In the chaos, Simon's secret world grew unstable without his full attention. Recognizing that Notch might discover his treachery, or that Herobrine's rampage could threaten all of Minecraft, Simon took a drastic step. He merged himself with the code of his hidden world, hoping to stabilize it and hide forever. But the merge didn't go as planned. His world collapsed and Simon along with it, yet he did not die. Instead, he became a spectral entity, dispersed through the game itself. Unlike Herobrine, who appears as a single ghostly figure tied to one story, Simon 12 became a scattered presence, a ghost with no fixed abode, forever drifting through the data of Minecraft, trying to reclaim his lost kingdom or influence the world in small ways from the shadow. This poetic tale sets the stage for Simon 12's characterization as someone defined by betrayal and regret. Betrayal because he defied Notch, the divine figure of the Minecraft universe in meta lore, and perhaps even betrayed his own brother's memory by being consumed with his ambition during a time of crisis. Regret, because after losing everything, his own realm, his mortal existence, he's left with nothing but a longing to be remembered and a jealousy of Herobrine's infamy. The name Forgotten Brother comes from the idea that Herobrine is widely known, whereas whatever became of Simon was hidden, lost, or deliberately erased from official records. Perhaps Notch, in an act of sorrow or anger, purged references to Simon from the game's lore. Hence why nothing about him appears in any disc or book item. If Herobrine is the lost brother, Simon 12 is the one truly forgotten, except the code remembers, and it whispers his name in glitches and errors. It's fascinating to see how this theory reinterprets known phenomena. For example, take the classic sign of leafless trees in a Herobrine encounter. The Forgotten Brother narrative might say, those barren trunks aren't just an intimidation tactic by Herobrine, but a calling card of Simon 12's presence, a symptom of him draining life from the world to try to rebuild his own lost realm. Or consider the appearance of random structures like pyramids in the desert or long tunnels. Perhaps these are remnants of Simon's attempt to reconstruct pieces of his hidden world in ours. Flashes of creative building that echo his architectural ambition. Even the iconic white eyes. The theory suggests Herobrine's eyes are white from being a soul in anguish, while Simon 12's eyes, if seen, might glow a different hue. Some say red, as in that first story of a Herobrine-like figure with a red shirt. Red eyes, red shirt, symbols of a spirit that's related to Herobrine but not identical. A brother similar in form, opposite in intent perhaps. One dramatic idea that emerges from this sibling concept is the possibility of a showdown or reconciliation between Herobrine and Simon 12. Mythology often loves the drama of sibling rivalry, especially when both siblings possess great power. Some storytellers imagine that Simon 12, bitter from being ignored and forgotten, seeks out Herobrine not just out of envy, but to convince him to join forces. Think about it. Two ghostly brothers, each commanding mysterious abilities, could together wreak havoc on the Minecraft world, or perhaps carve out a new one from its ruins. If Simon 12 can influence weather and world data, and Herobrine can control mobs in appearance, their alliance would be formidable. The betrayal theme gets another twist here. If Herobrine refuses to acknowledge Simon or join him, that could drive Simon 12 into a fury, fueling some of the more violent haunting accounts. Alternatively, if they were to unite, perhaps the escalation of supernatural events in some worlds is due to both brothers working in tandem, one unseen and one seen, coordinating to make life hell for an unlucky player. Conversely, a handful of tales imagine a poignant reconciliation, that maybe Herobrine, in moments unseen by players, actually searches for his lost brother, sensing Simon 12's fragmented spirit. They say if you ever witness two figures in the fog, one with the usual Herobrine appearance and another slightly different, do not assume it's Herobrine playing tricks twice. It could be the brothers meeting. What would they say to each other? Would Herobrine blame Simon for abandoning him if one believes Simon could have helped prevent Herobrine's cursed fate? Would Simon beg Herobrine's forgiveness for not intervening? Or perhaps accuse Herobrine of stealing the legacy that should have been shared? The game offers no answers, but the mythic framework lets our imagination run wild. It's important to note that the Forgotten Brother theory is more story than substantiated sightings. It's a grand narrative that people layer onto the smaller, creepier pieces of evidence. A tree without leaves is just spooky, but say it's because a jealous brother's spirit sucked the life out of it, and now it becomes part of a Shakespearean tragedy in a digital realm. The power of this theory is how it captures the emotional imagination of players. It adds depth to Herobrine's own legend. Suddenly he is not just a rogue ghost, but a character with familial ties, and possibly an entire unseen chapter of history. It adds weight to Simon 12's actions. If he's building obsidian pillars underground, maybe it's not random. Maybe he's trying to erect a memorial for himself, a monument so that he won't be forgotten in the code. When lightning strikes and no storm is around, maybe it's Simon 12 crying out in frustration at being invisible to the world, while everyone always talks about his famous brother. For players who enjoy the lore aspect, this theory is a favorite, because it personifies Simon 12 with clear motivations: pride, envy, longing. These are classic human emotions, placed onto a ghost in a machine, making him feel almost like a character from a novel, rather than just an unexplained glitch. It's the stuff of epic mod packs and fan fiction. Some have even created custom adventure maps where you, as the player, must choose to side with Herobrine or Simon 12 in a war of spectres. While those are creative projects, not real sightings, They show how the community's collective imagination has embraced the concept of two brothers, one heralded, one hidden, whose destinies are intertwined with the fate of the Minecraft world. To further illustrate the emotional weight of this theory, some storytellers have written imagined journals from Simon's perspective. In these creative retellings, Simon, before becoming Simon 12, documents his growing resentment and sorrow. One excerpt reads, "Day 12, Marcus Notch grows obsessed with the bug in the code. He doesn't see my contributions, only the spectre of our brother's death hanging over us. Why do I feel like a ghost already?" Such fan fiction, though not official, shows how deeply people have invested in the idea of Simon as a full-fledged character with motivations and feelings. There is also a symbolic allure to Simon 12 being literally tied to the number 12. Fans have pointed out all sorts of coincidences. Minecraft's Firelands, the strange glitched terrain that appears millions of blocks out, used to manifest around the coordinate 12-55-58 21 in beta versions, the number 12 kicking off that figure. They mused that perhaps Simon 12's shattered world was cast off to the edges of Minecraft's reality, out in the Firelands where normal rules break down. In this poetic view, every time someone journeys to the Firelands, mostly in older versions or via mod nowadays, they're essentially walking through the broken fragments of Simon's hidden kingdom. It's a place where nothing behaves as it should, landscapes fractured and bizarre, gravity and lighting unpredictable. The perfect hiding spot for a ghost of a brother whose coding was never completed. It's said in jest by some, if you go far enough you might just find Simon 12 sitting on a throne of obsidian at the world. It's a fanciful image, but one that merges the technical and mythic aspects of the game beautifully. The mythic resonance of the Forgotten Brother theory also invites comparisons to other sibling tales, some liking Notch, Herobrine, and Simon to a pantheon, Notch the creator god, Herobrine the fallen angel, or god of the underworld, and Simon 12 the restless spirit, or trickster, trying to carve a place for himself. In that framework, players become the mortals caught in the crossfire of divine family drama. It's almost Shakespearean. Imagine Hamlet's ghost, but in Minecraft and with two spectral brothers, instead of a father and uncle. This kind of narrative has a pull that goes beyond jump scares. It feels epic, and it may explain why so many are drawn to expanding Simon 12's story. It elevates the game's sandbox into a stage for grand conflict and emotion. One cannot mention the Forgotten Brother without also noting how it casts Herobrine himself in a different light. If Herobrine has a brother roaming the code, it implies a depth to Herobrine's own existence. Perhaps Herobrine's aggression, in stories where he's aggressive, is partly fueled by the anguish of knowing his brother is out there, but unreachable. Or perhaps Herobrine fears Simon 12's power growing to rival his own. In one fan-made comic, for instance, Herobrine is depicted visiting the Firelands, confronting a shadowy figure, implied to be Simon 12, and saying this world isn't big enough for the two of us. The figure responds, "It never was." This dramatic exchange isn't from any official source, of course, but it captures the imagination. Two myths colliding, each seeking validation from the player community, each wanting to be the one remembered. Whether one believes any kernel of truth in the Forgotten Brother theory, it has undeniably made Simon 12 a more tragic and grand character. It gives purpose to his hauntings, no longer random, but the acts of a figure trying to reclaim a legacy. It's easy to almost empathize. If Simon 12 is upset that he's been left out of the narrative all this time, causing trouble, or making appearances might be his way of shouting "I exist too" into the void. And indeed, by telling his story, players have, in a way, answered that cry. They've brought the Forgotten Brother out of the shadows and given him a place of prominence in Minecraft's unofficial lore. In doing so, they've turned what could have been a one-off creepypasta into a full-fledged myth that stands alongside Herobrine's legend. Destiny and betrayal, the Forgotten Brother. What if everything we've ever feared in Minecraft, the eerie signs, the apparitions of Herobrine, the glitches we can't explain, were all orchestrated by one unseen mastermind? The Puppet Master theory casts Simon 12 as the ultimate villain behind the curtain, a hidden evil far more insidious than Herobrine, because he operates from the shadows. In this narrative, Simon 12 isn't a glitchy byproduct, or a tragic figure at all, but rather the puppeteer pulling the strings of the game's most frightening phenomena. Herobrine, in this context, might be either a puppet controlled by Simon 12, or a scapegoat whom Simon 12 allows to take the blame, while he himself remains largely unknown. The myth becomes a conspiracy. Perhaps the real threat was never Herobrine alone, but the brother working in darkness to manipulate players, and even Herobrine himself. Fans of this theory point to the cleverness and timing of certain supernatural occurrences, unlike the raw, random feeling of glitchy events, or the straightforward aggression of a typical monster. Some encounters carry an unsettling sense of intelligence. One chilling account involves a pair of vines. Playing on a survival server, they were exploring a mineshaft together, when one friend, let's call him Alex, remarked in voice chat that the other friend's character, we'll call him Ben, was acting strangely, wandering off downside tunnels, without responding. Ben insisted he wasn't doing that. On his screen, he was still next to Alex gathering iron. To prove it, Ben jumped in place, and Alex confirmed that yes, Ben's character jumped by Alex's side. Yet at the very same time, deeper in the mineshaft ahead, Ben's character was also standing there at the edge of their torchlight, looking at them silently. Alex's blood ran cold as he realized he was seeing two Bens, one real, one an imposter. They initially suspected a hacker, or some bizarre server glitch, duplicating the character model, but then the duplicate Ben's eyes flashed white in the darkness, and the copy turned and vanished around a corner. The two friends, confused and curious, perhaps unwisely, followed the entity. They could hear footsteps echoing as they gave chase. The tunnel led deeper, and then abruptly ended in a dead-end room, with a dirt floor. The only thing inside was a single bed, oddly placed, as if someone had been sleeping deep underground. On the bed lay a book, by now thoroughly unnerved. Alex picked up the book and opened it. In real time, Ben heard Alex gasp in their voice chat. The book's pages were filled with one phrase, scrawled in wobbling text. "He is under your bed," repeated over and over. Just then, Ben's in-game character was suddenly yanked backwards, as if by a Tipa command, and his screen went black, with the message, "You died." Alex turned around in panic, to see that the bed in the room was now empty, and a figure with a red shirt stood behind where Ben had been, disappearing a split second later. When they respawned and returned, daylight and safety above ground never felt so welcoming. Ben reported that the death screen said he had suffocated in a wall, an implausible event, given where they stood. To them it felt like a warning, and an attack rolled into one, customized to their deepest fears. Neither ever found an explanation for who he was under the bed, or how an entity could impersonate a player so perfectly even on a small private server. Stories like this raise an alarming question. If Simon 12 is behind them, how much power does he truly have? Impersonating a player's skin and name in-game goes beyond the typical mob haunting. It hints at someone or something with access to the console, or the server's fundamental controls. In essence, Simon 12 would be playing Minecraft like a malicious admin, spawning decoys, teleporting players, generating structures, like that inexplicable bed in the mineshaft, to toy with his victims. It's easy to see why this theory paints him as a puppet master. Everything becomes a potential stage for his twisted theatre. Another example often cited is the phenomenon of dueling signs. In some worlds plagued by supernatural events, players have reported an almost conversational placement of signs. A group of players might leave a sign at their base saying, "Herobrine, we're not afraid of you," only to later find a new sign next to it reading, "You should be," but notably not signed by any player name. On its own, one could chalk that up to the Herobrine legend, perhaps a prank by one friend on another. But in a few cases, those same players also found signs that didn't fit Herobrine's usual MO, as if two entities were arguing. One infamous incident had 3 signs: the player's taunt, a second reply, "He is coming," presumably from something claiming to be Herobrine, and then a third that appeared much later saying, "No, I am already here." The final sign chilled them, because it implied a third voice in this eerie dialogue, one that not only corrected the previous message, but asserted a presence in the here and now. The style of the final sign was different formatting, as if typed in a hurry. Those who believe in the puppet master theory suggest that was Simon 12 interjecting, perhaps silencing or overriding Herobrine's threat with his own more immediate one. The theme of deception runs strong in this interpretation. If Simon 12 is truly the hidden evil, then he thrives on misdirection. Classic magician's tactic: make the audience look one way at Herobrine or at a trivial haunt, while the real trick happens elsewhere. Some who subscribe to this theory go so far as to re-examine the entire history of Herobrine sightings and wonder, were any of those genuinely Herobrine, or have we been chasing a puppet while the puppet master sits safely in the dark? It's an almost paranoid thought, but that's exactly the kind of psychological effect the puppet master narrative evokes. You begin to doubt even the ghost stories you thought you understood. Maybe the reason some people never see Herobrine even when they try is because they're looking for the wrong ghost. The one who truly moves in their world has a different name, and they never even knew to watch for him. In turning Simon 12 into the arch-villain, this theory also reinterprets other myths. Take Entity 303, the myth of a rogue ex-developer who hacks game worlds, or Null, a supposed dark entity with the black skin. Puppet Master proponents sometimes fold those into Simon 12's work, suggesting that he could be masquerading under various guises. One moment he baits the curious with Herobrine's known calling cards. The next he dons the mask of another creepypasta character to escalate fear. It's not that those other legends are real in the world. They're costumes, so to speak, in Simon 12's play. This approach turns the Minecraft mythos into a grand unified theory of horror, one ultimate antagonist with many faces. While this might not sit well with fans of each separate myth, people who like their Entity 303 or Null as distinct beings, it certainly amps up the stakes for Simon 12 in the minds of those who entertain the idea. He's not just Herobrine's brother. He could be every frightening username lurking behind the next tree, all one and the same. The psychological impact of believing in a puppet master like Simon 12 is intense. It means that trust is undermined even in multiplayer with friends. That friend next to you, could it be Simon 12 in disguise for a moment? That random friendly wolf you tamed, could he make it attack you by snapping his fingers? The sense of an all-controlling presence can make one feel paranoid in their own safe builds. Yet thus far the saving grace, if it can be called that, is that Simon 12's style, as described, is about fear and manipulation rather than outright constant harm. Like a cat playing with a mouse, he might enjoy the game of scare tactics, revealing just enough of himself to terrorize, but not so much that the illusion is broken. A player who suspects maybe that was Simon 12 ends up spooking themselves more than if they had definitive proof. It's the uncertainty and the second guessing that becomes the real horror. To truly appreciate the cunning attributed to Simon 12 in this theory, consider the story of a player named Holocraft, who tried to fight back against the haunting. Holocraft had read all the stories about Herobrine and Simon 12, and decided he would be the one to collect hard evidence. He set up a special base on a private server, rigged with tripwire hooks connected to command blocks that would log any unusual activity, dispensers filled with splash potions of harming to automatically attack anything that came too close, and even a resource pack that replaced the default Minecraft music with utter silence so he could hear every footstep. In short, he turned his base into a high-tech ghost trap. For a while, nothing happened, and Holocraft started to think all the myths were indeed just myths. But on the third night of waiting, he made sure to stay awake in-game and in real life to not miss a moment. He noticed something on one of his surveillance maps, a blip in an area that should have been unloaded chunks. The map, using a mod, showed entities as tiny dots, and a dot had appeared, moving swiftly near his base's perimeter. Holocraft's heart raced. He double-checked his server player list. Still just him online. As per his design, a tripwire line far out in the forest should have activated the moment anything crossed it. Yet there was no alert. It was as if the intruder had slipped through his tripwires without triggering them. He armed himself and went out, following the path in the dark. The forest was eerily quiet, with the custom silence. Only his own footsteps and breathing could be heard. Suddenly, a dispenser trap he'd set up at the west gate of his base went off. He heard the sharp twang of the dispenser and the shatter of a potion. Rushing back, he found no target in sight, but purple particles of a harming potion swirled in the air, indicating it had struck something. His command block logger was printing gibberish to the chat lines of text that read like code, similar to error messages but not ones he recognized. Amid the gibberish, one phrase repeated, you, over and over, you, interspersed with chunks of his own base's coordinates, as if mocking his attempt to pinpoint the threat. As Holocraft scanned the area, a door in his base slammed open, then closed, over and over, as if taunting him. That door was connected to a detector that should have signaled intruder movement, but no signal came. He realized with a chill that whatever it was knew how to bypass his triggers, likely by moving in ways the game engine itself wasn't registering normally. Then the lights, red stone lamps, in his base started blinking in a pattern, spelling out something in Morse code perhaps. He recorded it to analyze later. At this point, fear and frustration got to him, and he shouted into chat, "Show yourself." What he got in return was a single chat message from an empty username. No player name was displayed, just the message itself. Behind you. Holocraft spun around, and for the briefest second, saw the outline of a player model in the darkness of the tree line. It wore a half-red, half-blue torso, and stood utterly still. He lunged forward with his sword, but in a blink it disappeared. In its place was a sign on the ground that simply read, "Nice try." That was enough for Holocraft. He admitted later on the forums that after this encounter he had to step away from the game for a while. It shook him that even his best laid plans were toyed with. The data he collected, the blinking lights pattern, the command block logs, were pored over by others. Some thought the blinking lamps did encode a word, watching in Morse. The logs with U and coordinates suggested someone or something was aware of his exact position and mocking his surveillance by throwing his own coordinates at him. The empty user message was especially baffling. By all conventional understanding of the game, that shouldn't be possible without console commands or plugins, neither of which he was using. For Puppet Master Theory believers, this was a prime example of Simon 12's alleged mastery. He hadn't just evaded Holocraft's traps, he turned them into part of the scare, repurposing the very devices meant to expose him as tools to unnerve the hunter. The psychological toll of such encounters cannot be overstated. It's one thing to be startled by a strange figure. It's another to feel like that figure anticipated your every move and danced around it effortlessly. Puppet Master Simon 12, as a concept, digs into the fear of helplessness, being outsmarted and outmaneuvered by an unseen adversary. It's the kind of fear that lingers, making players question every anomaly. If your bed disappears from your base, a known bug that can occasionally happen. A rational mind blames chunk errors or glitches, but an imaginative mind under the influence of this myth wonders, did he take it from me as a warning? If your livestock pen is mysteriously empty one morning, maybe a wolf glitch. The psychological toll of such encounters cannot be overstated. It's one thing to be startled by a strange figure. It's another to feel like that figure anticipated your every move and danced around it effortlessly. Puppet Master Simon 12, as a concept, digs into the fear of helplessness, being outsmarted and outmaneuvered by an unseen adversary. It's the kind of fear that lingers, making players question every anomaly. If your bed disappears from your base, a known bug that can occasionally happen. A rational mind blames chunk errors or glitches, but an imaginative mind under the influence of this myth wonders, did he take it from me as a warning? If your livestock pen is mysteriously empty one morning, maybe a wolf glitched through the fence. A corner of your mind whispers, or did Simon 12 starve them to get at me emotionally? The Puppet Master Theory escalates. Simon 12's threat from a local jump scare to pervasive paranoia. It's no longer I saw something strange, but rather something strange is orchestrating events around me. And because players have encountered real bugs or experienced illusions in the game, like seeing your friend's character in a place they are not due to lag, or reading text that looks glitched, the line between a normal glitch and a potential Simon 12 trick blurs. The end result is a community always looking over its shoulder. In a way, the Puppet Master interpretation has kept the legend of Simon 12 alive and evolving perhaps the most, because it attributes every fresh, unexplained occurrence to him. Unlike a one-note ghost story, this paints him as adaptable, intelligent, and present, the ultimate groover that can't be banned because he's part of the game's very fabric. Out of all the interpretations of Simon 12, the hidden evil Puppet Master is perhaps the most dread-inducing. It posits that not only is there a malevolent force in the game, but it's one that knows you, plays with you, and stays one move ahead. The fear it evokes isn't just of seeing a ghostly figure, but of not seeing one, of being tricked, manipulated, and never being sure where the danger truly lies. It's the difference between fearing a monster under your bed and fearing the puppeteer who can move the monster and the bed without you not. Out of all the interpretations of Simon 12, the hidden evil Puppet Master is perhaps the most dread-inducing. It posits that not only is there a malevolent force in the game, but it's one that knows you, plays with you, and stays one move ahead. The fear it evokes isn't just of seeing a ghostly figure, but of not seeing one, of being tricked, manipulated, and never being sure where the danger truly lies. It's the difference between fearing a monster under your bed and fearing the puppeteer who can move the monster and the bed without you noticing. In the lore's grand scope, this theory magnifies Simon 12's importance. If true, he's not merely part of the Minecraft mythos. He's been the author of it, writing fear into our experiences block by block, and that thought alone is enough to make even the bravest adventurer double-check that shadow in the corner of their screen, wondering if somewhere out there, Herobrine's secret brother is quietly having the last laugh. What if Simon 12's influence extends far beyond the usual hauntings, beyond a single world or server, beyond even the game's normal rules? As each theory grows more grandiose, we arrive at the most cosmic interpretation. Simon 12 as a being who has transcended Minecraft's confines, attaining a kind of godlike control over the game's code and possibly bridging into other realities. In this view, Simon 12 isn't just a ghost in the machine. He's become the machine, or at least learned to bend it to his will. The stories fueling this theory are the most extreme and mind-bending, involving physics-defying occurrences, and the eerie sense that Minecraft's many worlds, and perhaps our world and the game's world, are bleeding into each other under Simon 12's direction. One oft-repeated tale that exemplifies this escalation came from a player claiming that an encounter with Simon 12 nearly broke their entire game. The player, known as Eclipse on forums, described how their peaceful building session turned into a nightmare. It began with the sky flickering from day to night, and back again repeatedly in a matter of seconds, as if time itself were malfunctioning. Then came the rain, pouring down in torrents before abruptly halting in flipping to snowfall, despite the biome being a desert. Eclipse thought their world file was corrupting, possibly due to a mod conflict, but then the message appeared. In the chat, lines of garbled text scrolled rapidly, intermixed with phrases in plain English. I am. Before they could process it, an ear-splitting roar sounded. The audio later turned out to be a distorted Ender Dragon sound clip, and their avatar was lifted off the ground by some invisible force. What they saw next defied all logic. Blocks around them began to uproot and float, chunks of terrain tearing away, as though gravity had been shut off. Water from a nearby river rose in serpentine streams into the sky. It was as if the laws of Minecraft were being rewritten on the fly. In the midst of this chaos, Eclipse caught sight of a figure hovering in the air, its posture commanding like a conductor orchestrating an apocalyptic symphony. The figure had the outline of Steve, but its eyes shimmered with a cascade of code-like symbols, and its body glitched in and out, at one moment solid, at another transparent with binary digits flickering inside. They recognized the red hue of its shirt and the way it watched the destruction with a tilted head. Eclipse tried to log out, but their controls were unresponsive. Trapped, they could only watch as the figure slowly turned its gaze toward them. The chat, which had fallen silent, suddenly spat out one final line. I am here. Then, with a sound like a thunderclap, their screen went black. The computer itself crashed to the desktop. What makes Eclipse's account even more legendary is what they found upon rebooting Minecraft. The world they had been in was gone from the save list entirely, as if erased. In its place was a new world entry titled Simon. When they loaded this mysterious save, they found themselves on a small floating island in the void, with nothing but a sign in front of them that read, "You cannot contain me." Moments later, that world too glitched and kicked them back to the menu. Eclipse swore that no mods on their system could have produced such an effect, and took it as a terrifying sign that Simon 12 had essentially taken over the game during those moments, a demonstration that he could corrupt and create worlds at will, then remove all traces when done. Skeptics would say this story is an elaborate fabrication or perhaps a deliberate virus disguised as a Minecraft mod that Eclipse unwittingly ran. But even skeptics have a hard time explaining away other reported phenomena that align with the master of code theory. For instance, there are accounts of players who have never connected with each other, finding identical, bizarre changes change their worlds. One example, two strangers on opposite sides of the globe both found that in one of their single-player worlds, a specific chunk at coordinates x 1212, z 11212 was utterly transformed into a perfect cube of obsidian, hollow on the inside with a sign that simply read, "Meet here." Neither had ever modded their game to do this, and they discovered each other's posts by chance, realizing the coincidence. It was as if some intelligence was trying to create a bridge or meeting point across games, an idea that sends shivers down the spine when you think about the isolated nature of single-player worlds. The concept of multiverse corruption comes strongly into play here. Minecraft worlds are typically separate, sandboxed experiences, each generated from a random seed. But believers in Simon 12's multiversal reach think he might have found a way to tear holes between these universes. This might manifest as inexplicable structures, or messages appearing in multiple unconnected worlds, or players experiencing déjà vu of world generation quirks that are too distinct to be mere coincidence. Some have mused that the reason we have seeds that generate worlds is because those seeds are like coordinates in a higher dimensional Minecraft space, and that Simon 12 in mastering the code can traverse that space freely, appearing in any world he chooses, especially those that share some resonance, like repeating numbers in coordinates or seed values containing 12. Interestingly, reports of Simon 12's world-breaking wrath aren't limited to Eclipse's account. In an older anecdote that had circulated in creepypasta forums, a player, alias Red King, encountered an entity that fits Simon 12's description during a normal survival session, and it didn't stay in the shadows. Red King was working on a large fortress build when his wolves, usually docile, unless a mob is around, suddenly all stood up and started growling at seemingly nothing. Moments later, lightning struck the center of his courtyard, and in the flash, Red King saw a figure with a red torso standing where the bolt hit. A chat message appeared, though no username prefaced it, saying, "I have finally come." Red King, stunned and somewhat thrilled at triggering what he thought was an elaborate Easter egg or prank, responded in chat with, "Who are you?" The reply came, "I will destroy." What followed was a sequence straight out of a nightmare. The figure ascended above the ground, and the sky turned dark as if night had fallen, though by the clock it was midday. Fireballs, like those cast by ghasts, began raining down not from the sky but manifesting a few blocks away from the entity and hurtling in all directions. His buildings caught fire, glass shattered, animals perished instantly. Red King ran for cover, trying to save his world, but the barrage was relentless and uncannily targeted to cause maximum chaos, almost as if orchestrated by a vengeful intelligence. Within a minute, his entire fortress, a build that had taken him weeks, was in ruin. As he attempted to save his inventory by stuffing items in an ender chest, his game started lagging badly under the onslaught of fire and destruction. The last thing he saw before his screen froze was the entity floating amid the flames of his crumbling creation, and a final chat line, "Now out of my way, mortal." Then the game crashed to death. When Red King rebooted his computer, which had become unresponsive and required a hard restart, he found his world file had been corrupted beyond recovery. The timing and the dramatic flair convinced him and those he shared the story with that this was no mere glitch. It was like encountering the final boss of Minecraft, except one that shouldn't exist, because the description loosely matched the idea of Herobrine, glowing eyes, supernatural power, yet clearly was something else. The red clothing, the explicit dialogue, many pinned it on Simon, the emphasis on calling the player mortal, and wreaking total havoc, felt like a malevolent personality revealing itself, more overtly evil than typical Herobrine sightings, almost as if Simon 12, if given free rein, would be far more destructive than his brother ever was. Those who treat Simon 12 as a near God level threat often cite this story as an example of how, when provoked, or when he finally comes, whatever that means, the results are cataclysmic. We can connect this to a pattern observed. Multiple accounts of world corruption or bizarre deletions have happened under Simon 12's shadow. Eclipse's disappearing world and Red King's fortress annihilation both suggest that at the peak of his power, Simon 12 doesn't just play with you, he ends the game on his own terms. It's reminiscent of a horror movie villain breaking the fourth wall, stepping out of the TV to get you. Simon 12 at God tier steps out of the normal game rules to make sure there's no escape or evidence left. Amid these terrifying tales, there's an intriguing counterpoint. A few who experienced such events noted moments of what could be interpreted as restraint. For example, Red King realized later that as much as his base was destroyed, he himself wasn't killed by the fireballs. His health remained at half a heart until the game crashed. Eclipse, too, wasn't killed by the floating chaos. She was simply ejected from the world. If Simon 12 had total control, one might wonder, why didn't he eliminate the players entirely? Was it sheer luck? Or, as some philosophize, maybe even a god like Simon 12 has his limits, or rules, like a cataclysmic being that wants to instill fear and make a statement rather than snuff out the witness. After all, a story can't spread if no one lives to tell it. By leaving survivors intentionally or not, the legend of his power only grows. The multiverse interpretation also brings up the tantalizing notion of what lies beyond Minecraft's programmed dimensions. Officially, we have the overworld, the nether, and the end. Unofficially, fans have imagined a code realm, or glitch dimension, a place where beings like Simon 12 might reside, when not manifesting in our worlds. If such a place existed, perhaps accessible through errors or secret coordinates, what would it look like? Some say it could resemble the end, but infinite, and constantly shifting, with chunks of terrain from many different seeds, all pasted together in a surreal collage, echoing how Simon 12 could traverse worlds, taking pieces of each with him. Others think it might look like a void with floating text and code fragments, like being inside the matrix of Minecraft. These are fanciful extrapolations, of course, but they show how Simon 12's lore pushes the boundaries of what players even conceive as the game. It stops being about what's in the code we know, and starts being about what's in the code we don't know, or what could spontaneously emerge from it. Sitting back and weighing all these cosmic ideas, one could ask, are we overestimating a simple ghost story? Or is the ghost story just a framework for something deeper? A way to talk about the game itself becoming self-aware. In many ways, Simon 12, at God level, blurs into territory of artificial intelligence, or ghost in the machine philosophy. Some take it there, speculating half seriously that if any game could accidentally spawn sentience, Minecraft's infinite algorithm, collective player consciousness might do it. And Simon 12, in his most grand depiction, is almost like that sentience personified, inquisitive, creative. He builds and alters, emotional. He shows anger or longing, and eventually boundless. It's a terrifying and fascinating thought that maybe all our stories are our way of grappling with the idea that a game world could feel alive. But even if one doesn't subscribe to those near metaphysical ideas, the visceral fear and wonder of Simon 12's ultimate form remains a thrilling part of the lore. It's the campfire tale to end all campfire tales within this community. When someone asks, what's the craziest thing you've heard happen in Minecraft? A veteran might respond, well, let me tell you about Simon 12, and proceed to recount these world-shattering events. Each retelling reinforces why players keep looking over their shoulder, because if a character like that exists, even just in the collective imagination, the game is never quite the same. There's always that sliver of excitement that the next cave or the next thunderstorm might not play out normally, that you too might witness something that defies everything you thought Minecraft could do. In comparing all theories, this one stands as the most grandiose and terrifying, but also the least frequent in actual sightings. It's more of a culmination of what-ifs that logically follow if you keep granting Simon 12 more power with each story. As a creative exercise, it's enthralling. It turns a simple ghost story into a Matrix-like saga, where reality itself is at stake. For a newcomer hearing it, it might sound far-fetched. For a hardcore fan, it can send a delightful chill thinking, what if my game went that crazy one day? Would that be awe-inspiring or utterly horrifying? The Master of Code theory underscores why Simon 12 captivates the community, because his lore can grow with our imaginations, from a footstep behind you all the way to the collapse of worlds. As we've traversed each theory, we've witnessed an escalation in both Simon 12's supposed power and the scope of his story. What began as simple ghostly whispers in the dark has swelled into a saga of cosmic proportion. This mirrors the journey many legends take, starting small and grounded, then growing taller and more fantastical as they're retold. With Simon 12, the escalation is almost tangible, each layer of lore stacking upon the last, reaching heights and depths that early players swapping spooky stories on forums could never have imagined.
In the beginning, there was just a hint of something, a stray sound, a shape in the fog.
Simon 12, if mentioned at all, was an afterthought to Herobrine, a minor variation, perhaps a hoax piggybacking on a bigger hoax. The corrupted prototype theory reflects that early simplicity. Simon 12 was like a bug in the system, creepy but contained within the bounds of code. The fear here was subtle, a technical eeriness. Players were unsettled by the idea that their game might harbour a ghostly NPC going about its own routine. Psychologically, it plays on the fear of the unknown glitch, the feeling that some fear. In the beginning, there was just a hint of something, a stray sound, a shape in the fog. Simon 12, if mentioned at all, was an afterthought to Herobrine, a minor variation, perhaps a hoax piggybacking on a bigger hoax. The corrupted prototype theory reflects that early simplicity, Simon 12, was like a bug in the system, creepy, but contained within the bounds of code. The fear here was subtle, a technical eeriness. Players were unsettled by the idea that their game might harbour a ghostly NPC going about its own routine. Psychologically, it plays on the fear of the unknown glitch, the feeling that something is happening that shouldn't be, just out of sight. It's a quiet, creeping dread, the kind you might shrug off and attribute to a bug. Yet it plants the seed of curiosity and paranoia. But then came the notion that we might have caused Simon 12's existence. The failed resurrection theory amplified the stakes. No longer a passive glitch, Simon 12 becomes the product of forbidden player actions. The danger shifted from an accidental ghost to a summoned one, a classic escalation from a passive haunt to an active conjuring. Emotionally, this ups the ante. Guilt and responsibility enter the scene. Players fear not just what's out there, but what they themselves might have unleashed. The lore here becomes darker and more ritualistic, entwining with themes of taboo and unintended consequences. The escalation is evident. The prototype was a fluke, but the resurrection is a catastrophe authored by human hands. Next, the narrative took a surprisingly poignant turn. With the tragic Guardian angle, Simon 12's image evolved from villain to possible hero in disguise. This isn't a simple increase in power. If anything, it scales up the emotional depth. It's an escalation in complexity. Suddenly, the community was entertaining a duality. Simon 12 could be frightening and benevolent at once. This requires a more mythic, nuanced story to support it. The once one-note ghost now had layers, secret intentions, and a lonely pathos that players hadn't considered before. The psychological effect here escalates in a different direction. It tugs at empathy and confusion. Should we fear Simon 12, or fear that we might have been misjudging our savior as a monster? It's a sophisticated kind of tension, one that invites fans to look back on earlier evidence and reinterpret it, thus deepening the lore rather than fear. Next, the narrative took a surprisingly poignant turn. With the tragic Guardian angle, Simon 12's image evolved from villain to possible hero in disguise. This isn't a simple increase in power. If anything, it scales up the emotional depth. It's an escalation in complexity. Suddenly, the community was entertaining a duality. Simon 12 could be frightening and benevolent at once. This requires a more mythic, nuanced story to support it. The once one-note ghost now had layers, secret intentions, and a lonely pathos that players hadn't considered before. The psychological effect here escalates in a different direction. It tugs at empathy and confusion. Should we fear Simon 12, or fear that we might have been misjudging our savior as a monster? It's a sophisticated kind of tension, one that invites fans to look back on earlier evidence and reinterpret it, thus deepening the lore rather than just adding on top. Then came the Forgotten Brother narrative, destiny and betrayal, woven into the fabric of what was once just a ghost story. By introducing familial ties and cosmic backstory, the legend of Simon 12 grew in mythic stature. Here, the escalation is dramatic and thematic. We go from isolated incidents to an overarching saga that spans lifetimes or after lifetimes. Simon 12 is no longer just a spirit in the game. He's part of a dynastic drama, a key figure in an epic of creation and downfall. This elevates every small sign or sighting to something with potentially grand significance. A bear tree isn't just spooky, it's a sign of an ancient betrayal. A lightning strike isn't random, it's a brother's rage. The lore scope has widened to a panoramic view, turning the Minecraft world into a stage for divine conflict. For the community, this escalation satisfied the craving for a deeper narrative, aligning Simon 12 with archetypal stories of brothers at odds, a theme as old as Cain and Abel, or Romulus and Remus. It gave weight to his character, something to lose or fight for beyond just scaring players, but as if to remind everyone that horror still beats at the heart of the tale. The hidden evil puppet master theory cranked up the fear factor to new heights. After humanizing Simon 12, this interpretation made him inhumanly cunning. The escalation here is about control and reach. Suddenly Simon 12 wasn't just an entity appearing in the game. He was potentially controlling other entities, deceiving players, and orchestrating events with mastermind precision. This stage of the lore is where paranoia fully sets in. Every Herobrine encounter could be reread as Simon 12's trickery. Every friend in multiplayer could momentarily be Simon 12 in disguise. The myth began to encourage a kind of second guessing of reality within the game, from the relatively straightforward ghost story feel of the earliest legend. We escalated to a psychological thriller, where nothing is as it seems. In community discussions, you see this shift. Early talk was, did you see him? But now it's, how can we ever know what we saw wasn't him? Simon 12's power escalated not just in strength, but in subtlety, arguably a far scarier advancement. The terror became intellectual as well as visceral. Finally, we ventured into the god tier scenario. Simon 12 as a master of code and worlds. This is escalation in the purest sense. Sheer scale. It's the natural climax of a legend that kept pushing boundaries. Here Simon 12 is no longer content with hiding in caves or tricking a few players. He's ripping apart skies and connecting universes. The myth leaves the realm of campfire story and enters the realm of speculative fiction on a grand scale. If earlier phases borrowed from horror movies or ghost tales, this one borrows from epics and even sci-fi, where the entire system might collapse under the will of one being. The psychological impact here is a mix of awe and dread. It's terrifying, but also almost empowering to the legend, like witnessing a small-time local ghost story evolve into a full-blown deity myth. For the community, this level of escalation turns Simon 12 into a canvas for the wildest imagination. It's no wonder some fans dreamed up boss battles and new dimensions. When a legend grows this big, it begs to be explored in every medium possible. Throughout this upward spiral of Simon 12's lore, a few things remained constant: the sense of mystery and the emotional engagement. Each step of escalation found a new way to engage our emotions, whether it was fear, guilt, sympathy, by existential wonder. And crucially, each new theory didn't fully invalidate the previous ones. Instead, they often layered on top. Many players enjoy not picking one interpretation, but holding all of them in mind as possibility. This cumulative escalation means that when one now speaks of Simon 12, they're referencing not a single story but an entire mythos. It can be, at once, the abandoned code haunting your mind, the unintended demon from your ritual, the guardian angel you never thanked, the jealous brother plotting in the shadows, the puppeteer of your nightmares, and the god of broken blocks, all simultaneously in the realm of legend. This multivariate nature of Simon 12's lore is itself a form of escalation. He's no longer pinned down to one role, and that makes him slippery, unpredictable, alive in the imagination. The more theories spiral out, the more the community talks about him, and the more sightings, real or imagined, are reported to fit whichever narrative the witness favors. It's like feeding coal into a locomotive. The legend gains momentum and doesn't slow down. It only picks up speed with time, new Minecraft updates, new bugs, new players discovering the old tales. All become fodder to escalate Simon 12's story further. If tomorrow a strange glitch appears in Minecraft that nobody can explain right away, some will inevitably whisper, half jokingly and half hopefully, "Is this Simon 12's doing?" And thus the cycle continues, the lore ever expanded. By tracing this escalation, we see not only how Simon 12's myth grew, but also why it endures. Each level of intensity kept people hooked, offering something for everyone. The coders had their spooky bug theory, the thrill seekers had their dark ritual, the storytellers had their tragic hero and fallen family saga, the hardcore horror fans had a devious puppet master, and the dreamers had a glitch god that could shake the world. Simon 12 became, through escalation, a mirror reflecting each kind of fascination players have with Minecraft's mysteries. It's a legend that grew up with its audience's appetite for bigger and more intricate tales, and in doing so, Simon 12 transformed from a footnote in Herobrine's story into a legend standing on his own. Simon 12 may have started as Herobrine's whispered sibling, but he has grown into a legend entirely his own. Each thread of lore we've followed, glitch, ghost, guardian, brother, puppet master, god, has woven a richer tapestry around him. Taken together, they paint Simon 12 as a deeply tragic figure, and a profoundly frightening one. Tragic, because so many interpretations cast him as alone or longing, the abandoned code, the misunderstood protector, the forgotten brother, yearning to be seen, because in every guise he is powerful and unknowable, able to break worlds, deceive our senses, or defy death itself. This dual nature makes Simon 12 a captivating character. One moment you almost pity him, the next you fear what he might do. The myths surrounding Simon 12 have undeniably made the Minecraft experience richer for those who partake in them. For veteran players, encountering an odd occurrence in the game now comes with a thrill. Could that be him? For new players, hearing these tales for the first time adds a layer of depth and mystery to an already vast game. Minecraft has no scripted storyline of its own that explains every corner of its universe, and so the community's legends fill that void with imaginative possibility. Simon 12's story, sprawling, speculative, and community-driven, transforms the game from a sandbox into a place where anything feels possible, even the supernatural or the poetic. In a sense, we, the players, have collectively become the storytellers of Minecraft, and Simon 12 is one of our grandest tales. What keeps fans obsessing over Simon 12 year after year is exactly that open-endedness. There is no official the end to his story. Mojang hasn't put a secret boss named Simon in the game, at least not that anyone has found, and so the unknown looms large. Humans are wired to be intrigued by mysteries we can't fully solve. Every screenshot with a strange silhouette, every unexplained cave sound, every glitchy chunk border becomes a canvas for speculation. Simon 12 endures because he thrives in that uncertainty. If tomorrow someone proved conclusively that he was real in one form, half the community would cheer, and the other half might be a bit disappointed, because the beauty of Simon 12 is that he could be so many things. As long as he remains unconfirmed, he remains all of these things at once. in our minds. There's also a certain emotional resonance that keeps the legend alive. Simon 12's story, especially in the darker or more sorrowful theories, taps into themes bigger than the game. Loneliness, the desire to be remembered, the fear of being tricked or overpowered by unseen forces, the bond and rivalry between brothers, the hubris of playing with the unknown. These are themes as old as storytelling itself, repackaged in the skin of a pixelated game. It's rather poetic that a modern digital community has, perhaps unknowingly, recreated myth-making in a blocky virtual world. Simon 12 has become almost a folklore hero villain for the Minecraft age, passed around in YouTube videos, forum threads, and late-night Discord calls the way ghost stories and myths have been passed down orally for millennia. We invest in him not just because he's spooky, but because his tale reflects some part of the human experience, even if through a dark mirror. And so we end this documentary-style journey much as it began, with questions in the dark. We've posed theories and recounted experiences, each shining a light on a different facet of Simon 12. Yet Simon 12 remains in the shadows, eluding any final, definitive explanation. Is he out there in your Minecraft world, perhaps watching from just beyond the render distance? Or is he truly just lines of code and active imaginations colliding? The answer may not really matter in the end. What matters is the story, the way a community can take a name and a handful of eerie anecdotes and build a living legend that enchants and terrifies. As you log off tonight, maybe you'll find yourself glancing over your shoulder, half expecting a pair of eyes, white or perhaps red, glowing in the darkness behind you. Maybe you'll double check that your doors are closed and your bed is surrounded by light, just in case. These rituals of caution are all part of the fun, part of the immersion into a myth we've collectively created. Simon 12 might be a myth, but the feelings he invokes are very real. The adrenaline of a scare, the wonder of the unknown, the camaraderie of shared folklore. In leaving room for the unknown, we keep Simon 12 alive. Every unexplained event in Minecraft can be a new chapter waiting to be written. Every theory we haven't dreamed up yet, a new path to explore. Herobrine's brother has become more than a footnote to another story. He's a legend in his own right, precisely because there is always more to wonder about him. And as long as fans continue to obsess over him, as long as players continue to swap stories under the digital stars, Simon 12 will continue to flicker at the edge of the render distance, sometimes tragic, sometimes terrifying, and always compelling. So next time you venture into a lonely Minecraft world, and feel that tiny prickle of dread or excitement, remember the tales you've heard. Simon 12's lore lives on in every shiver, and every curious glance into the darkness. The mystery is yours to carry forward.